Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining this live stream today. My name is Katie Mullins, and I am the Senior Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Specialist for Jesuit Refugee Service. This week, we mark World Refugee Day, which is an opportunity to honor refugees around the world. We're also just a few weeks away from the start of the Summer Olympics, where 29 athletes will compete as part of the Refugee Olympic team, and the whole world is focused on the power of athletes in sport. We thought this was a great opportunity to recognize both, to celebrate the talent of the refugee team and talk about how sports and recreational activities can be a tool to empower refugees by enriching their lives, boosting their mental and physical health, promoting confidence, forging important social relationships, and promoting their overall resilience and well-being. We've got a really great program for you all today. We'll share stories from refugee athletes, a performance of the anthem for the Refugee Olympic team, and an appearance from Olympian Katie Ledecky. Before we get started, I want to invite you to share any questions that may come up, so feel free to post those on whichever platform you're tuned into. We hope to make this an interactive experience. Or you can send an email to communications@jrsusa.org, and we'll be monitoring this throughout the stream today so we can respond to any questions that are submitted. At JRS, we use recreational activities and sports as part of our mental health and psychosocial support programs, as a way to accompany refugees and forcibly displaced people around the world. Activities like soccer, martial arts, dance, and art can be ways that refugees, especially youth, can heal and find hope. One program where we do this work is in Mabon, South Sudan. Founded in 2013, the program serves young girls and boys, allowing them the opportunity to play, learn, and develop important relationships through the use of martial arts. We're going to share a clip with you now.
I want them to have respects. It's the first things that I expect them to have in the future, to have respect for their people, and then to have the competence and also to build trust among themselves. And also I need them to have the skill of relationship to be a good leader in the future. The importance of the sport, let me say, number one, it makes your body to be strong and also flexible to know each other, and also you can have unity. When the youths come here to practice here, they don't waste their time even in the market. They don't go to drink alcohol. They don't smoke cigarette. When they came here, they forgot those things there.
Before I did not came here, last time I was not happy. So I came to Jerusalem. I found myself. I changed. So I become very happy.
They become strong, and I saw some of them, they are even becoming as a trainer. I have seen some of them, they have been even helping me. you can help your people, the community. Without power, you cannot do anything. Yeah, that's the important bit. Yeah.
I had the opportunity and the privilege to visit this program several times over the last few years, and it is deeply inspiring to see these athletes and youth come together, work together, and grow together through this martial arts program. Next, I'd like to introduce a conversation I recently had with Katie Ledecky. Katie is an Olympic gold medalist and all-around incredible person. She couldn't join us today because she is currently making history at the Olympic trials. Way to go, Katie, we're cheering for you. But I was lucky enough to have a conversation with her about how sports have impacted her life and fueled her passion to advocate for refugees. Hi, I'm Katie Mullins, Senior Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Specialist with Jesuit Refugee Service, USA. I work closely with our teams around the world to address the mental health and psychosocial needs of refugees and displaced people that we serve. And I'm very excited to be speaking with Olympic swimmer and gold medalist, Katie Ledecky. Katie, it is an inspiration to so many. Sorry, I'm nervous.
You're fine.
Sarah, do I have to start that again? Or
Hi, Katie. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for all the great work you do. As Katie said, I am Katie Ledecky. I am really looking forward to chatting with Katie and learning more about how my one passion, swimming and athletics, can have a positive impact on another passion, helping refugees. And I know JRS does some great work, so I'm really excited to talk to Katie about what you do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Katie, and it's wonderful to have you here with us today. Can you tell me a little bit more about your passion when it comes to supporting and empowering refugees?
Of course, yeah. I think everyone deserves to have a place to call home. And I'm so inspired by the stories of refugees I've come to know through places like JRS. I got connected with the Jesuit Refugee Service last fall. And as I read more about what JRS does, I wanted to learn more. And I've been particularly inspired by refugee athletes at the Olympic Games. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a refugee Olympic team. The first refugee Olympic team was in 2016 at the Rio Olympics. So I competed alongside a number of refugees. And I hope that this summer in Tokyo at the Olympics that a lot of people will be able to cheer on these refugee athletes and really learn their stories. So I've just really been inspired by the work that JRS has done. And I also, my own grandfather came into the US and sought asylum, and he defected from communist-run country in the 1940s and took refuge here and stayed for over 40 years before he was able to go home and finally reunite with his family. So it's just a little personal as well, and just knowing how hard my grandpa worked and the respect that I have for him and what he accomplished in his life, combined with just learning these stories of all these refugees and the refugee athletes, has really inspired me to learn more and get involved. And yeah, I'm interested to hear more about the programs that you have for young kids to get involved in sports. And I know it helps their mental health as well.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and thank you for sharing that about your grandfather. I didn't know that about your family, and I'm certain he must be very proud of you now, but it's also really inspiring to hear how that's merged into your interest in supporting JRS, both from your own experience and also from your experience at the Olympics with the refugee athlete team there. And I'm wondering if you might tell me a little bit more about some of the athletes that represented the first refugee team to compete in the Olympics. And maybe there's a particular athlete that you met that you were particularly inspired by.
Yeah, I just recently had a conversation with Yusra Mardini, who's a refugee athlete who competed in Rio in 2016. She's also a swimmer, and she has this incredible story of how she and her older sister fled the Syrian war, and they set off on this perilous journey to find safety in Europe in the summer of 2015. And so they traveled through Lebanon to Turkey before departing for Greece in an overcrowded dinghy. And 15 minutes into the sea crossing, the boat's engine failed. And as a professional swimmer, Yusra was really determined to not let any of her fellow passengers drown. And so Yusra and her sister and 2 others actually jumped into the waves and swam for 3.5 hours in open water to stop their dinghy from capsizing. They literally saved lives. And so it's incredible to hear her story and how now she's been able to continue her swimming and make it to the Olympics, compete in Rio. And I know she's training for Tokyo now. And I hope that we'll get to meet in person this summer. So she has an incredible story. And of course, her story is a success story of finding refuge and really getting to safety, and ultimately being able to pursue her dream of competing and continuing to swim. And it's just incredible to hear stories like that and know that there are so many other stories like that are out there.
Yeah, I think I can't even imagine what it must have been like in that situation, but it is also so amazing that she was able to use that skill, that talent, and in such a harrowing situation. And it's also really amazing that she has now the opportunity to apply that as a profession in the Olympics. And I hope that you will also have the opportunity to meet her in person in Tokyo soon as well. And I think that those stories are kind of, in JRS, we get the opportunity to meet so many young and inspiring athletes, or just children in general, on a daily basis. And I think sports is such an important avenue to channel that positivity, to channel some of the opportunities that we can kind of like promote for them. And so one of the things that we do in JRS is we actually run a lot of sports games and recreational activities. And we really establish these activities because we believe and that children have the right to play first and foremost. And even when experiencing the incredible challenges that refugees endure, they still need to have that opportunity to be children. So that's one of the foundations behind the recreational and sports activities that we have. And while most of the kids that we work with, most of the children won't necessarily become Olympic athletes, the investment in these activities is still crucial. And so we know that children, youth, and even adults can build friendships and develop life skills through sports and games while having a fun space to cope with the daily stressors and the hardships that they've experienced. So that's one of the things that we do in JRS, also recognizing that these activities are important for children.
I love that. Yeah, it's, I just think back to my childhood and how central sports were, whether that was swimming or sports that I played with my classmates. And it's so great that these young children who are going through so much are able to have some moments of play and moments where they're able to connect with each other and still have those experiences growing up. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about some of these specific programs. I know you have a lot of different areas that you serve. So is there one specific athletic program or game or something that you can tell us about?
Yeah, one that always comes to mind for me, because I've also had the privilege of visiting it several times now, is our martial arts team in South Sudan. And so this team is mostly is comprised of Sudanese refugees, but we're so lucky to have an amazing facilitator and a coach. And he actually initially learned this martial arts craft when he was first displaced in Ethiopia. So unfortunately, he's been displaced multiple times now, but developed this skill set, trained as a martial artist when he was displaced in Ethiopia. And now he trains a group of boys in South Sudan several days a week, some girls too, in Doro Community Center, which is a center that we built there for children to have access to safe spaces to play in. And so the boys and girls practice their physical routines in this center, but they also have learned how to become more disciplined and motivated in their daily lives outside of the practice, which is something that they've told me when I've gone and visited. And the programs are just so cool to watch because they're so structured and they go through their routines and you can see this discipline. But the fact that they talk about how it actually applies to their lives outside, how they become more motivated, how they become a team even outside of this center was so inspiring for me to see and to hear from them. And we've actually recently expanded it so that the activities are even more holistic. They go outside of just the physical practice of martial arts. And we've started including some meditation components into the activity. And we've also started some life skills groups so that we can not only promote this martial arts component, but we're also making sure that we are supporting their mental health, their emotional health, and their physical well-being. And I think we'll actually have the opportunity to see more about that program later, but that's one that always comes to mind.
I love that. I think we'll have to come up and see if we can figure out some sort of swim program that maybe we can develop together.
I would love that.
But yeah, I think as you said, just athletics has so many great benefits, whether that's physical or mental. And I know these young kids have gone through so much in their life, more than most people go through in their entire lives. So what kinds of mental health issues are kids coming into these programs with? What do you see the most?
Yeah, so children come with like such a range of what we call mental health and psychosocial needs and concerns. And it's just so dependent on the individual and their experience. But they generally encounter extremely distressing situations that cause them to flee their homes in the first place. And then in addition to that, they have these daily challenges of being displaced, and that adds to this difficulty. Many of the kids are exposed to violence, food insecurity, loss of family, friends, or loved one, and they experience a lack of routine, safety, stability. And so they're particularly vulnerable to mental health and psychosocial consequences of these experiences. Just the idea of not having that like friend group anymore, or the family unit that they came from, it causes stress, it causes anxiety, it causes changes in behavior. Sometimes they struggle to pay attention at school. Sometimes parents or caregivers talk about it's really difficult to manage their behavior at home because they're having normal reactions to really difficult situations and just trying to process everything that they're going through and cope on a regular basis. So we see so many different responses, but they're all very, like you said, they go through so many difficult situations. It's quite normal to see behavior changes or stress manifest.
Yeah, yeah. And then how do sports address some of these needs, or what have you seen really directly impacted by these athletic programs?
Yeah, well, in general, we know, like, as you talked about in your experience, like, physical activity is a great and very effective way at relieving stress, right? And through our sports activities, we try to create that safe space, right? And in that safe space, we try to reestablish a sense of security, a sense of routine and connectedness. And that usually, as I was saying, is what is eroded when people and children experience displacement. And so when we create this space, it helps children and youth cope with the difficulties they've experienced, give them opportunity to be children again, and potentially, ideally, reestablish a sense of hope for future. So maybe during your workouts, you've used swimming or training to cope with difficult times you've been through or stressful situations you've experienced, or I'm sure you've developed relationships with teammates that have gone outside the pool, and that's essentially what we're trying to do, is create these opportunities to release that stress and build that connection back, despite the fact that they might still be experiencing a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I mean, I've found that swimming and participating in sports throughout my whole life really helped me develop a lot of life skills like time management and routine. And having routine, I think, is so important and something that must be so tough for these kids to develop and for their families to develop. And just having that time with, I'm sure they have made friends with their teammates and their coaches, and having that support system outside of your family must be so valuable for these kids. And I can only imagine how that must help them cope and start to move on, process, maybe relate to one another. I'm sure, I mean, I don't know how much they talk to each other while they're playing their sports, but I'm sure they can tell stories and relate to each other's challenges. And sports provides other challenges, but they're fun challenges, and they're opportunities to learn from each other, to learn about yourself, and to, as you said, relieve some stress, get your mind off of what's going on with your family or in your life, or things in your past, things that you might be missing or missing out on, or you know, as you said, it just builds some hope, some confidence, gives hope for the future, and allows opportunities to set goals, and, as you said, connect with other people. And I think that's so valuable. And I love this work that you do, and the fact that there are these programs that get the kids out, get them active, and get their minds off of the challenges that they're facing every day.
I feel like you said it better than I ever could, and also from your own experience of how important sports has been in your life. But those are all the things that we are trying to create or cultivate around the children, so that they can have access to that, so they can cultivate those feelings, those friendships, those relationships, that security, those personal life skills as well. That's always what we aspire to. But at the end of the day, also, if it's just an outlet and they have the opportunity to have fun and you know, be a kid again, that's also as good of an outcome as we could hope for.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we've talked a lot about kids, but I'm sure, I mean, the adults need some time for these things as well. Are there any other programs you'd like to mention that maybe address some of the needs that the parents or adults face?
Yeah, so that's true. And actually, I will say, I know JRS Zimbabwe has done a workout for older adults activity. Like they wake up, I think, at like 5 in the morning, or they meet at like 5 in the morning, and they do their daily exercises, and it's for older adults so that they can stay fit and in shape. And it's another program that I really love, but combines that sports with the mental health and psychosocial well-being. But in general, we do a lot of different types of mental health and psychosocial programming, and sports and recreation is a big one for children. But we also train teachers, for example, to detect and respond to children that are experiencing stress, or to develop more social and emotional learning into their curriculum, so that we're really looking at the child as a whole while they're accessing education, and understanding that their experiences are also going to impact the way they learn. So that's another way that we provide mental health and psychosocial programming, or look after the mental health and psychosocial well-being of refugees. Other activities that I really like that JRS does are home visitor programs, and that's where we train community members, so refugees themselves, in basic like active listening skills, to identify like most vulnerable members in their communities. And the goal of this program is really to just decrease that social isolation that some people feel. So again, in the same way that we know that sports and games can be a space for community and connection, some people might not be able to access that. So the home visitors actually go and visit with the people on a regular basis, check in, see how they're doing, and maybe even link them to basic needs that they might have, like food, water, or adequate shelter. In some places, we do more traditional mental health programming, or at least what we think of might be more traditional, and that's along the lines of individual or group counseling. So for people that do have more specific mental health concerns like depression or anxiety, and we have trained staff to facilitate those groups or run those individual counseling. So we do a wide variety of services that trying to promote the mental health and psychosocial well-being of refugees, but particularly around children. This is one of the more prominent activities that we have, are these recreational activities.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, thank you so much for telling us about these programs today. And please, 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 you or anyone else at JRS, let me know how I can help. I know there are viewers today watching this that are probably wondering how they can help out JRS. So please don't hesitate to let me know personally, or let anyone know what we can do to help out, because I really love these programs and think that they're so valuable for young kids and their families and the adults as well, to really improve their life, improve how they're doing, improve their day-to-day, and still have some moments of play that they deserve, and that is a human right, really. Yeah.
I think that's the best way to sum it up. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I'm sure, insanely busy schedule to join us today, and also for all the work that you've done to promote the rights and the needs for our refugees, and for your work with JRS. It's so greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
So as you saw, I was a bit starstruck myself to have the opportunity to speak with Katie Ledecky, and to have such an inspiring conversation. Thank you again, Katie, and congratulations for your amazing achievements at the Olympic trials so far. I'd like to take a few minutes here to address some questions that have come up from our viewers. So as we mentioned before, you can drop questions in whatever platform you're using, and we'll try to answer them throughout the live stream today. So the first question that came up is from Josh in Arizona, and he asked, are there any activities for students that aren't necessarily focused on athletics? How can students express themselves in other ways? And this is a great question. So I started to touch on it a little bit in my conversation with Katie. Athletics is one way that we work with youth through these recreational activities, but we often use arts, music. Dance is a really big one. There's an amazing dance troupe based out of Malawi that is just doing some incredible work, and I think recently had a documentary filmed about them. So various arts and recreational activities, but we also do more programmed type activities such as social and emotional learning. So I touched on this a little bit, where we teach usually teachers or caregivers to respond to the social and emotional needs of children, and help children learn about their emotions and how to regulate these things through play and through participatory activities. So that's another intervention that we use in a lot of different programming around JRS's programming around the world. And then other ways are just creating safe spaces again, so they're not so structured, where children can access a safe place and just have a right to play. We do activities also for children, specifically children that have disabilities, and we have centers where they can access tools mobility tools, physiotherapists to actually help kind of work on some of the mobility challenges that they might be experiencing. So there's just such a broad range of services that we do try to create, because we also understand that, sports is specific for one group maybe, and not everyone is going to be able to access sports the same or have the same result in engagement through sports. So we do try to offer a wide variety of different types of activities. We also offer, for example, like youth support groups, where we come and they can have, even some of these support groups have like a community service component built into them, but they come around, talk about themes that are related to that a lot of youth are experiencing, like relationships, struggles at home or with academics, or how to have good communication with peers. So more structured mental health and psychosocial support activities could be beneficial for different groups as well. We have another question from Tony based in Rochester, and he asks, are there other recreation centers worldwide where JRS creates safe spaces through play? Absolutely. So we saw one example in Mabon, the Dora Center. I would say in almost all of the countries that I can think of that JRS works in, we try to create these spaces. So in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, in Latin America, in Europe even, we try to construct or work with other organizations to cultivate these safe spaces or these community centers that refugees can access to and feel comfortable, sometimes through recreational activities, or sometimes even meeting, like I had mentioned, there are other services like counseling, but maybe accessing a mental health professional there as well. But we do try to create these child-friendly spaces in the majority of the countries that we work in. And then the last question that I've seen that has come through so far is Brooke from Winchester. She asks, is there a specific physical activity you've noticed has a greater impact than others? For example, yoga versus soccer. That's a really interesting question. I have to say, I don't think I've observed necessarily, at least globally, that one program or one kind of activity has a greater benefit than the other. It totally just depends on what is of interest for the youth themselves. And so we saw the martial arts in Mabon, but that's actually only one group of recreational or sports activities that we have in Mabon. We also support the football teams that are locally organized. So we help build pitches and keep those pitches maintained and have the resources for the community to operate their own football leagues. We have a girls volleyball team there as well. So again, it just depends on what resonates for that individual. One of the things that we are trying to do, though, to heighten the impact of these recreational activities is to try to add some more opportunities for holistic psychosocial support interventions. And so again, that can look like the inclusion of mindfulness and meditation into the martial arts classes, or it can be having opportunities to develop youth groups where we do life skills sessions with the athletics. So what I have seen is sometimes when you combine these sports activities with an additional psychosocial intervention, then we might see stronger or more impactful outcomes. But that's a really good question. So again, don't forget to drop any additional questions that you might have on sports, refugees, and mental health and psychosocial support into whatever platform you're using, or you can send it to the email, again, communications@jrsusa.org, and we will respond to you as we go. Finally, I'd like to introduce the International Orchestra of Refugees. The International Orchestra of Refugees is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to connect forcibly displaced musicians with meaningful opportunities to preserve their cultural heritage, find economic prosperity, and boost social integration. The International Orchestra of Refugees is proud to debut a studio performance of the Refugee Anthem, composed by Ariane Hu, a resettled Syrian refugee composer, who composed the anthem for the refugee athlete team that participated in the 2016 Summer Olympic Games in Rio, Brazil. This performance is dedicated to the Jesuit Refugee Service, the 29 refugee athletes participating in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, and the refugees these athletes represent from all around the world.
Tuungane sote kwa pamoja, kwa umoja ndio tutashinda. Tuungane sote kwa pamoja, kwa umoja ndio tutashinda. Tuungane, tupendane, kwa umoja ndio tutashinda.
Tuungane, tupendane, kwa umoja ndio tutashinda. Tuungane, tupendane, kwa umoja ndio tutaweza. Tuungane, tupendane, kwa umoja ndio tutaweza. Sote pamoja, kwa umoja ndio tutaweza. Tuungane.
Wow, that performance really gave me chills. Thank you so much to the International Orchestra of Refugees. That was an incredible performance. And thank you again to those who've submitted questions. If you haven't already, please do so. We have a few minutes left. And I think I did see one more come through from Hamza, based in DC. The question is, JRS programs and services seem to equip participants with skills that they can practice in and share with the broader communities. Are there examples of this that I might be able to share? Yeah, I think especially in terms of the sports and recreation activities. So these are really geared towards youth. And what comes to mind, again, is our programming in Malawi. So what we've seen is that these kind of access to recreational activities, particularly when targeting youth, can really equip them with the skills that they need to be agents of change in their own communities. So we've seen, for example, this dance troupe has developed into its own community-based organization. It's now applying for funding for their own community centers in the refugee camp there. They offer leadership courses. The members there actually support other community-based organizations to open up. And I think this is a really good example where we see just some of the components that we try to teach in these recreational activities, that we try to kind of create opportunities for youth to explore, really being sustainable, because then they have the opportunity to take all of these lessons learned, apply them, build them to a much greater scale, and create these durable and sustainable interventions in their own community that are designed by the community and then implemented by the community themselves. So that's the one thing that really comes to mind. And I think there are other examples as well. But again, really just kind of using these tools, understanding that sports is and recreation activities are a gateway to all of these skill sets that youth have the opportunity to develop and be exposed to, and then can become those leaders in their communities. So thank you for that question. And I just again want to say thank you so much to everyone that participated and joined today. I would like to invite you to continue to celebrate refugee talent as we honor World Refugee Day on Sunday, and of course the Olympics in a few weeks' time. So thank you so much.